Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Debbie Grote. Fun topic today. We're going to talk about the price discussion at the listing. And I think the reason this is a super fun topic at the moment, it's kind of a moving target, right? The market is just so unusual that sometimes you think you've got the perfect price in mind, and then the property doesn't sell. Sometimes you think you overpriced it and then it doesn't sell. And if you say the wrong price, they don't list with you. So it's kind of a really critical topic. So often we discuss it in our webinars, but today I thought we're just going to take this one chunk of pricing, which is at the actual table at the listing appointment. So go ahead, if you will, for me, and maybe type in your name and where you're from in the chat box. I want to make sure you can all hear me. And if you had a really burning question as you registered for this webinar today, something that you would really like to make sure that I answer for you, please be sure to type that in. Hey, Tammy, good to have you back. Julie, Thomas, great to see you guys. All right, perfect. So I see everybody pouring in. And I will save a little time at the end also to answer your questions. We're not going to drag this out. It's not going to be a super long webinar today because, again, I just want to focus on this one piece, the price discussion at the table. So as I see all of your names, I just want to welcome back many friends and followers that join us often. For those who might be new to us, my name is Debbie Grote, co-founder and CEO of Forward Coaching. Today, I'm at our office in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Our main headquarters is Newport Beach, California, but we have the pleasure of coaching all across North America. So I get the opportunity to speak to literally hundreds of great agents every single month that travel to multiple locations. So the market right now, it's just a little bit weird, right? It's just a little weird. And we're in a phase where some economists and financial advisors predict that we have a couple more months of this phase in the market. We may see some more acceptance of rates being in the sixes. We may see people getting off the fence. And there's a prediction of quite a few years of very good market ahead. So could be that we're working our way through the hard, but you know what? Pricing is difficult right now. And it is also one of the most common reasons listings are lost. It's not just to the price that's discussed, but how that conversation is handled. And I want to give you guys a little personal, what not to do, I guess, story. Years ago in the California market, there was a time in the market where actually I think it was like 94. I remember because it was painful. The prices were just dropping and it was so difficult to get properties sold. Unlike today, while today there is some inventory in some parts of the country, then there was massive inventory, just massive. So bottom line, if a house wasn't priced perfectly, it just did not have a chance to sell. It was that tough. So I decided I'm going to be strong and I'm going to go in and I'm going to be clear and I'm going to be direct. Well, I did all of that. And what I noticed was my listing presentation ratio went from, I would take about 90% of what I went out on. It went down to 48%. So I started analyzing it because I kind of panicked. And of course, I justified, well, but it's because they won't price at the price that's reasonable. But then I watched that listing and noticed eventually it usually did sell after a couple of reductions. And then I started thinking about how was I approaching them? How was I having that conversation? And I realized that I was going in maybe a little bit like the angel of death, right? Like, here's what's going on, and this is what you need to know, and this is what you have to do. And so they ran away from me and ran to somebody more positive, right? So I'm like, oh, I got to work on how I'm having this conversation. And I got to remember that I have to get across to them that I am there to represent them, not the data. Of course, we have to look at the data, but I am there to be their champion, to fight for them, which part of that is to be honest. So I changed my language a bit and said, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm sure you're aware the market is a little bit challenging. And there are some things we're going to need to navigate. The good news is I'm very experienced, extremely dedicated to the homeowners I represent, and I absolutely am going to fight to get you the highest, listen to this word, highest realistic price possible. What I also like to do is remind them that we're partners and that please know that, of course, I'm going to fight for them, because if I can sell their house for more, they're going to love me. They're going to use me again. They're going to refer people, and I'm going to earn more too. So I think that often we go in and we break rapport because they feel we're judging their house harshly. We feel they're not good. They feel we're not going to fight for them. Maybe we even use words like, well, we can try it, which to them means like you're not that committed. So be very careful about that language. Remember, they want you to be their champion. So we have 3 important things we got to think about. Yes, we have to tell them the truth. Just choose your words wisely, how you present it. Second, give them hope. Yes, I will get your home sold. We may have to navigate some tough decisions. We're going to do that together. I'm going to make sure you are absolutely well informed every step of the way. And I used to actually even say to them, while I cannot promise you that the market will deliver exactly what you want, I can promise you my 100% effort and extremely clear communication. And then next, we're going to offer them a strategy, which we'll get into in just a second. So to really do a good job in the pricing at the table, some of it is actually not just based on the data. It's going to rely more on your instincts. You know how sometimes you just know? Like, I'm thinking of one house I listed once, and I remember it was just a small little house, but it was beautiful. So upgraded, perfectly in style for the times. The garden was amazing, and they wanted a high price in a tough market. But see, I had strong market knowledge. I'd previewed everything in that marketplace. I knew what the buyer's options were, and I knew there was nothing like this house. So I took it at the higher price, and it sold in a week, right? So when you have great market knowledge, you can use that knowledge to share relevant information. What are we really up against? Who are they going to be viewing? What's going on in our market? Is this a price point where more homes are being sold or less homes? Because sometimes you'll see that, right, in the different price segments. Is there anything going on in the community or the market that's negative or positive that might impact our value? So I really encourage you, spend a little bit of time each day studying your market. It's really easy, right? Look at your MLS data. There's actually an affiliate that we often do webinars for, Area Pro. Area Pro is the name of it. It's a company you can subscribe to, pretty reasonable, month to month. And man, you can go in and pull all kinds of amazing data. It makes a beautiful report for you in a minute. And you can even say, hey, to their AI functionality, you can say, can you write me a script of how I would explain this data to a buyer or how I would explain it to a seller? So it's kind of easy today to be a market expert. Now, I think this is very important to remind you all that when you're on the phone setting that appointment with that homeowner, I want you to always ask them, I'm curious, what price did you have in mind? So I would say, Mr. Seller, I'm looking forward to meeting with you tomorrow at 4:00. And I imagine you've been keeping an eye on what's going on in your neighborhood. And possibly you've even gone online and checked the values. So I'm curious, what price did you have in mind? Now, if they tell me a price, I say, well, let me make a note of that. I don't discuss it with them. This is not the time to discuss if that's too low or too high, or you agree or you don't agree. Just write it down. But you might tell me, well, but Debbie, I've said that before. And they say, well, either I don't know, or, well, that's your job to tell me. And I say, absolutely. I'm going to bring all the data we need to make a well-informed decision. Just in case I should make a note of it, though, did you have a net figure that you are aiming to achieve? Because you know what I've noticed, that the ones that might avoid telling me the list price, but they would just tell me the net. Well, we want to net 100,000. Okay, I'll make a note of that. Well, now I can easily do my research on the back end and try to figure out roughly what they owe, or even ask them later in the appointment setting call, may I ask you, so I can maybe prepare a net sheet for you, what liens do you have on the property that would need to be paid for, right? So I really, if I can, want to know what they have in mind, because that tells me how tough is my job going to be, right? Or how easy. So I know what I need to be prepared for. So questions to ask during that price discussion, on the phone, at the table. Tell me, what have you been reading about the market? So maybe we've toured the home, we're sitting down at the table, and I say, Monica, tell me, what have you been reading about the market? What's your take on the real estate market? See, again, this gives me a window into their mind. How in tune are they really? Or how much work am I going to have to do here to bring them up to speed? And the data that you've been studying. So tell me any thoughts you have. Like, have you seen homes that have sold in the area? How do you feel your home, matches that property? Tell me a little bit about that. Again, I don't need to go into a lecture. I'm just listening, because here's what I've noticed. The more we engage them in that price discussion, instead of preaching at them, the more cooperative, I guess that might be the word, that they tend to be, right? So people today, they're pretty well informed. They have made a choice. They have made a decision. You might be able to sway them a little, but they probably have pretty strong price in mind. So since we know they're going to be going online looking at stuff, be prepared. You should also go online in advance, check all the portals that you think they have most likely reviewed. That's going to give you a little idea of what they might be thinking. So Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, note if they've told you about any evaluations. Maybe they're getting HomeBot tool from somebody. And then just be prepared to address any discrepancies. If you Google it, even Zillow admits that their estimates can be 10% too high or 10% too low. And I've actually had my husband print that out where it says Zillow admits estimates may be off, because then if a seller is attached to that Zillow value and it's way too high, you can say, well, it's a good tool, and yet look at what even Zillow says about their pricing. Keep the data concise. Now, if you are a very analytical person, you may just love data. Most homeowners, though, if you give them too much data, they will wallow in it. There's a statement that I heard years ago, and I've attached myself to this statement. A confused mind will not likely take action. So the more words you say, the more information you pile on them, the more confused they get, or the more difficult it seems, which is then when you hear, gosh, I have to think it over. So keep it concise. 5 active listings, 5 pending sales, 5 recent closings. Now, if you feel that it's going to be someone very analytical and they might want even more than this, then what I would suggest is have this data. And if they need more, you can go into your briefcase or bag and pull out a bit more information, right? But just don't overwhelm them. By the way, Pamela, we're glad you could join us. I know you said you're sorry you're late, and we are recording. And just so you all know, that we will send you this recording tomorrow. Okay, so they just have to turn it around, and then you will get a copy of this. So remember, we want this pricing discussion to be engaging and interactive. This will help tenderize them a little bit to the ultimate, nitty-gritty of this meeting. Now, also, when I had my moment where I was struggling with how do I handle this pricing discussion honestly and not lose the listing, but also know when is it okay to make a decision to take one above the price where I feel it needs to be, right? Because we don't want to take a bunch of overpriced listings. We have to make good business decisions. But right now, are you going to take some that are overpriced? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And you're going to work on them and you're going to reduce them. So let me share my standards of what worked for me. Number 1, are they motivated? Now, maybe they have a little bit of time, but I know based on their situation, ultimately, they want that home sold. Number 2, the property itself. Now, it didn't have to be perfect, but if it, is one of those horrible floor plans that they added a room to another bedroom to another bedroom, and it backs to the freeway and it faces the prison, well, that thing better be priced cheap, right? So the property itself, is there any real problems there? Then the homeowner, are they going to be reasonable and easy enough for me to deal with over time, or are they just going to make me crazy? And then the final one, in my mind, I would decide, where did I think that price need to be? And I would not let myself go more than 10% above. Now, that may not be your standards, but those were mine. Decide your standards before you get into that pricing discussion so you can make a decision. Is this one I'm willing to take a little bit higher and work it? And if so, how high am I willing to go? And Monica, yes, you're right. On pending sales, you won't have the information on what those properties sold at until they close. But they are a good indicator of the market, because if you show a seller a pending sale and that property went under contract in 2 days, reasonably safe to assume it probably sold at the listed price or close to it, or even a little bit more, right? But if you see properties on the market 45, 60, 85 days, couple of reductions, right? So you're looking at the history around those pendings. Now, occasionally, you might look at one of those pendings and say, I know that agent. Maybe I'll just give them a call and say, can you give me just a little bit of a heads up? Where are we in the ballpark of where that's sold, right? So our whole goal at that table is to build that feeling of partnership and trust. That's why I use words like us and we, and as we work together, and the decisions we will make, because my goal is to align myself with them. The reason I stress this, it's almost a natural phenomenon that it seems like sellers kind of put themselves on the defensive, almost like they're negotiating with us or negotiating against us. So I want to do away with any of that I can. I'm also very careful about the word comp. Don't tell them that their home comps to their neighbor, because guess what, guys? They're never going to agree. We pulled this photo because you can tell these could be potentially two townhomes or kind of like zero lot line properties, which would mean if you look at them, they look like a different exterior, but exactly the same floor plan. So I might say, hey, your neighbor's home comps to yours. They say, no, 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 no. Hey, the brick exterior, that is so much more popular. And you notice we've upgraded our front door, and our backyard has a little bit better view. They don't agree. So all you end up doing is offending them and breaking rapport. So don't even use that word. Just say, let's review the data that the buyers will be reviewing when they make a decision to look at your home or to submit a bid. So we look at that data together, right? Our 5 actives, 5 pendings, 5 sales. Now that we have reviewed the data, let's discuss where you feel you would like to list at. Now, you might be saying, okay, but Debbie, they told me a really high price on the phone, and the data isn't that price. Do I mention that price they told me on the phone? No, because you know what? Then they're going to have to defend it. Just let that go to the clouds. Now, maybe they'll bring it up again, but I'm not bringing it up. I'm going to pretend I never even heard it and just say, now that we've reviewed the data, let's discuss where you feel you would like to list at, right? Because that gives them a chance to back down off their position. Now, they will most likely give you a number. If it's right on, say, absolutely, I agree 100%. Let's do it. Let's get started. Here's our next step. Now, what to do if their price is too high? That may discuss more conversation, or may involve more conversation, more strategy. Keep reminding them, though, that you're going to fight for them, and you just want them to be able to make a good, logical decision. One of the things that is a great tool that I also like to share with them as we're going through this data is that there are 3 pricing strategies that they can consider. Strategy number 1, less is more. We price slightly below the data, hoping to spark a frenzy of multiple bids where people get excited. And it's actually a pretty effective strategy if they're comfortable with that. Strategy number 2, pricing to the data. Now, this would be a strategy that would allow us a reasonably quick sale, and a full value appraisal would be most likely. Strategy number 3, retail pricing. And that, Mrs. Seller, is where we go as high as we feel the market might bear, pressing on that ceiling, testing that market, analyzing that market in 2 to 3 weeks, and then making strategic decisions based on the response. So if their price is too high, then we're going to have to discuss with them that days on market are viewable, visible to everyone. Now, they may know that, but they don't really think about it. So if I said, gosh, Karen, we certainly can go at the price that you're suggesting. Now, what I'd want to share with you, though, that would really be the retail pricing strategy, and we'll have to test the market. And if the market does not respond, then Karen, here's what we're going to want to consider together. See, days on market are visible to everyone. As those days on market stack up, buyers make decisions about your home that are negative. Either they think something must be wrong with it, it's not selling, nobody wants it, I'm not going to go. Or maybe the seller is unreasonable and that's why it hasn't sold. Or maybe the seller is desperate now and I can make a lower offer. So none of it is good. So Karen, even though I know you're not in a big hurry, what we need to be mindful of is if we're going to go at this higher price, if we're going to test that market, we need to set a time in our calendar in 2 weeks. We're going to sit down together and we're going to gauge the market response. Now, if we're not liking what we see, at the very most, we should not give it more than another week. So at 21 days, if the market is not accepting our price, we need a strategy to correct that, hopefully attracting a buyer somehow pretty close to that 30-day window, because that's when you're likely to get a better offer. Now, what if their price is insanely too high? You may have to walk away. So if I have set my standard that I'm not going to go more than 10% above where I believe it should be, and they want to go 25% above where I believe it should be, I would say, well, Pamela, I just so would like to help you get your home sold. And yet, with your expectation of 20%, 25% over market, I honestly would rather turn your listing down today versus letting you down later. And I hope that you'll always remember that I respected you enough to tell the truth. And if I might suggest, if you list with another agent at that price, make sure they're sincere about it. Maybe you give them a little shorter listing to see how they do. If they come right out of the gate and ask you for a price adjustment, maybe you don't give it to them. You say, no, that's what you told me. Because see, that is a strategy that some agents will do. Take it at any price, work hard on the seller, and I would rather tell you up front where realistically we need to be. And I would love to represent you. Are you willing to reconsider? So I'm going to be very gracious about it. But if I know that that is just like insane, I can't do it. Because, guys, if you look at it, every listing that you take, it has a cost, doesn't it? It's the hard cost of anything you might do, photos, brochures, it's the hard cost. Some of you have staff helping you, it's their time. Your time is incredibly valuable. So it's a business decision. Years ago in that market, what I actually would do, I had calculated out, I don't remember what the amount was now, plus it's gone up since then, so wouldn't be relevant. But I had figured out how much it cost me, time and hard cost. And I would pull up in front of the seller's house. I would write a check out of my checkbook to that seller for that amount. And let's pretend it's $1,200. For $1,200, I would tear it out. I didn't sign it, right? Tear it out, put it in my pocket, and go into that table because I was trying to create a very real connection in my mind that this listing isn't free. That if I'm taking on this project, it is going to cost me $1,200. Am I going to get a good return on my investment? Right? Which helped me be a little more careful because we all get in that moment where we just want the listing. And you're right, Pamela. If they are insanely too high and you're not going to take it, you watch that listing for the expiration. But I think you also tell them, please know that if it doesn't work with that agent, remember, I respected you. I told you the truth. And please call me back and give me a chance to help you. Now, if it's high, but not crazy high, maybe it's 10% above, another great strategy is to build in, if they'll let you, that first and maybe even second price adjustment. So we are partners. Let's think about together, if we're 3 weeks from now and the market is not responding at all, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what would you be willing to adjust it to? Great, then let's put that plan in writing. Now, if we went another 3 weeks and that did not work, what would you be willing to do? And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but just having that discussion is helpful. So remember, we want to share with them days on market are not their friend, right? And then we talked about the 3 pricing strategies. So again, you guys will get a copy of this so you can review the 3 pricing strategies. I love this one because it gives them a chance to choose their strategy. So we're engaging them. And then once they choose their strategy, I can say, well, based on the fact that you want to use the price to the data strategy, that probably puts us in a range of X to X. See, I don't really think it makes sense to just give them one price. Are we that precise? I don't think we can be in this market. But when they choose their strategy, I can certainly look at that data with them and say, we're in a range of X to X, most likely. So inside of that range, where would you like to begin, right? And then I can guide them. Now, so once they select their strategy, you can suggest that appropriate range, and then this helps them make that choice. And remind them, 30 days, that's ideal. Now, it's not always going to happen. And when we see days on market now starting to go up in some markets, buyers sort of accept it's a new normal, that it's 45 or 60 days on market. 6 months ago, they would have thought that was terrible, that the listing, something's wrong with it. But, I still like to shoot for that window of 30 days. So check their price against your standards. If you feel what they want is too high, we've got to make sure, are they good people? Is the property going to be something that will be in demand? Do you feel that this is a good business decision before you accept it? And, either at the table or even sometimes on the price adjustment conversation, this is a question I love to ask. You know, just between us, confidentially, if an offer was perfect in every other way, possession, maybe they're buying it as is, you love the buyer. I mean, if it was perfect in every other way, confidentially, where do you feel the bottom price might be? Tell me confidentially, where do you feel that bottom price might be? And sometimes I'll suggest, well, perhaps we should go to that price and be more firm. See, I always like to try to get them to adjust as much as possible, because each seller has maybe one or two adjustments in them before they lose their mind, right? They just get really crabby. And Steve will send you the whole deck and everything tomorrow, so I don't take everyone's time to backtrack, but you will get that tomorrow. So if it was perfect in every other way, and if they're stubborn and say, I don't have to sell if I don't get my price, well, let's discuss that. May I ask you, what are your other options? So remember, if you've taken it and it's a little high, if you can have that first date for the first reduction, that's ideal. Let's make sure we don't say we can try it. They hate that. And if they will agree to that reduction in writing, get it before you leave. Now, you're still going to have to go back and confirm it with them. Get it before you leave. Now, years ago, there was a NAR report, and it's years ago. So, guys, I can't find it. I don't have it. But boy, it stuck in my mind because it was so accurate. It said that if you have a situation on a listing where the data just doesn't make sense, so there's not enough data, but what you do know is it's dead in the water. Nobody is looking at that property. Nobody. Well, you can statistically assume it's at least 10% too high. If it's getting some activity and no offers, you can assume it's at least 5% too high. So I want you to hang on to that. That's really important, because you can say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, some time back, there was a National Association of Realtor report, and this is what it said. And we're in that 5% range because we've had activity and no offers. So I'm calling today to ask, will you allow me to adjust the price by 5%? Because remember, they're only going to adjust it one or two times before they lose their mind. So you got to go for that bigger adjustment. Small, tiny ones doesn't work. It just doesn't. Now, my advice to you would be, don't take less than 3%. And if it's the dead in the water and you're asking for 10, don't take less than 7. And if they push back, don't press them hard. Say, you know what? I understand this is a big decision and it's distressing. Why don't you think about it for a few days? Think about it for a few days, and I will call you back and I will ask you then to do the right thing and pick the adjustment that will get the property sold. So you also might want to consider asking a few agents you respect. If you've listed a property, you feel it's too high, you could say to the seller, before we go to the open market, I want to survey some of the top agents in the community. You might have even invite them in to look at it once the listing is signed, but it's not yet on the market. And then we can review their feedback and information. So, and then again, stick with your MLS rules, but you might even want to consider testing an off-market sale for a couple of weeks just to see how the market responds before officially racking up that days on the market. So now you've listed it, you guys have agreed on a plan. Before you leave, spend a few additional minutes setting their expectation for what's ahead. How many showings are they likely to have? Where are offers likely to come in at? Right now in the luxury market, the offers are coming in pretty low, right? I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars low. So we want to let them know what to expect, talk about showing protocol, and how important it is for them to make that property accessible and keep it sharp. Talk about feedback. How are you going to let them know? How are you going to report to them the actions and activities and set that communication plan? We all got a little bit rusty. We didn't really have to have strong communication plans for our listings because they were selling so quickly, but now we do, right? So let's make sure, because if you don't talk to them frequently, they will assume you're not working. They will be mad at you. They will not reduce. They will not cooperate with offers, and they may even cancel the listing. So day 1, listing goes live. Day 7 to 14, monitor carefully that activity and feedback. Ask their permission. Can I give you direct and honest feedback? And then when you have to give them the tough stuff, remind them, you gave me your permission, so I owe it to you to give you the unfiltered feedback. And then day 21, that's kind of your line in the sand. Now, if it's a really big, expensive luxury property, you probably have to give it a little bit more time. So I know it sometimes is a tough decision, but again, once in a while, you're going to feel that this is not one you should take. And just let them know, I'd rather turn you down now versus letting you down later. Wish them the best. Ask them if they change their mind and need your help. Your door is always open. And remember, you could suggest if that agent's so confident, then hold them to it. And even potentially a shorter listing that keeps their options open. So guys, I know we covered a lot, and you may want to go back and just listen to some of the verbiage and pick out 2 or 3 great ideas. But I hope this was helpful and that you picked up something that you can go and use in the field immediately. Now, if you need more help and would like to talk to me about what it's like to work with us here at Forward, you can scan that QR code. My team will reach out to get you scheduled to listings are a little bit of trouble right now in some markets. There is that saying, listers are lasters. It is worth it. Listings bring buyers. Listers control the market. If you have to struggle through a couple of price reductions, a little bit more seller servicing, guys, it is worth it. All right, so thank you so much for joining us. And this recording will be on the way. I see one of our great clients, Jada Turner here, who could have actually taught this class. So Jada, thank you for joining. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day and a good weekend. I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.